Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Trumois Perek Ches Halacha Aleph. We are learning Daf Ayin Beis, and we left off on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph in the beginning of the third line, Rabbi Yirmiyah Boy. So first of all, quickly reviewing that we had the Shita of Rabbi Yeshua in the Mishnah, as we just finished learning Rav and Rabbi Yechanan as to the source of Rabbi Yeshua, that if a kohen at some point discovers that he was never qualified to be a kohen that's doing the avodah because he is a chalal, lemashal, because he's a ben gerusho, ben chalutza, avade, from when you find out that information going forward, he's not allowed to do the avodah, and if he does the avodah, his avodah is pasul, avodah psula. But retroactively, Rabbi Yeshua says, and that's based either on this pasuk or on that pasuk, that avodah is kishera. That is what we learned until now. Today's daf will begin with a detail in that halacha, l'shitas Rabbi Yeshua, which is what were to happen if such a discovery is made in middle of a avodah. When I say by an avodah, good, it's an opportunity to chazer, whether you're bringing an animal, so that we're going to refer to as the avodah, shchita, kabbalah, hilacha, and zrika. Or when it comes to a bird, the melika, the hazah, and the mitzui. If you remember, by the chata so'oif, both there is a hazah and there is a mitzui. These details are not important for today's daf. The question will be, let's say the shchita happened or the kabbalah happened. And now that's the meaning of in the middle. But if the dam was not yet thrown on the mizbeach, does Rabbi Yeshua say even here, since he began, he can continue? Okay, hold this question, and today's daf is gavaldik. Me'inyan le'inyan, the Gemara is going to compare this to the din of the chatas gezula. Now, the chatas gezula is a din that we have in the Bavli Gittin Daf Nun Hey and in other places. A couple of steps just to review. Number one, a given, prior to any carbon being brought, it has to be consecrated, mugdash, for that carbon. You can't stand bring a behemoth and right away shecht it. That step is a prerequisite. It goes without saying that only the owner can be magdish the animal. That means that if, God forbid, if I stole your animal and I magdish it l'shem chatos, that's the topic that we're speaking about, that consecration has no validity. And therefore, even if the kohen does all of the avodah correctly, I won't get kapara. The chachamim were afraid that since what we said is correct, there will be times that a kohen might be lazy and use as an excuse not to do the avodah from certain people. Maybe your animal is like a gazelte animal. Now, if that was taka the case, the kohen is right. But maybe there'll be a case, we all know this, that even the gazlan, one time he's finally being honest, and he's coming to the Beis HaMikdash, and he's bringing a carbon, and the kohanim might not do the avodah properly, or they'll delay it. So they're going to delay his kapara. So they made a new thing, that if people don't know that the chatos is a stolen chatos, it's koyach of the chachamim, even though be'emes it should not be consecrated, the chachamim have the koyach to say it is consecrated and it's going to give him atonement. In that topic, we have the conversation regarding what happens if it's discovered in middle of the avodah that it's stolen. It becomes known to the public, and we're going to compare, it's gavaldik, this case to that case. The other big topic today will be, think about, again, we're speaking about a kohen it's discovered that he's a ben gerusha, ben chalutza. And like we mentioned yesterday, in actuality, it's a far-fetched case. The Sanhedrin's purpose was to look into the yichus of every kohen prior to doing the avodah, which is why we have a klal that ein boitkin min hamizbeach ulamayla. In other words, when people wanted to know their yichus, all they needed to do in the times of the Gemara, which is just a few hundred years la'achar churban abayis, once they can prove that they're ben achar ben of that who served in the Beis HaMikdash, once you get there, you're good. But we're speaking about it could happen. The Sanhedrin made a mistake. Now think about this. When a person takes someone else's life, b'shoigeg, so we know the din. The din is he has to go under certain circumstances into Golus. We just learned this in the Rambam not long ago. He goes into Golus, and If during the sentencing of him going into Galus, there was a living Kohen Gadol, then he stays in any one of the Arei Miklat until the passing of the Kohen Gadol, and when the Kohen Gadol passes away, he's free to go home. The Goyal Hadam can no longer kill him and get away with it. What happens if during the sentencing of this Hoidig Nefesh Bishgaga, there wasn't a Kohen Gadol, the Kohen Gadol passed away, prior to appointing the new Kohen Gadol, Punkt then was his Din Torah. Then he'll never go free. He'll never go free. Question is, here you have a Yid, God forbid, Hoidig Nefesh Bishgaga, there was a Kohen Gadol, and at some point they discover while he's in Galus that the Kohen Gadol is a Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutza, which means maybe he was never a Kohen Gadol. So it's either or. Either he'll never go free because he was sentenced when there wasn't a Kohen Gadol, or the opposite. We're going to say that now passing the Kohen Gadol from doing the Avodah is equal to the Kohen Gadol passed away. And that discovery will actually make him go free. Min akotza el akotza. Either he'll never go free or that psak will be gavaldik. What's even more gavaldik, I know this is a sugya that I'm going to mention now. I just had a chance quickly. We had this in Nida Dav Beis Amid Beis. I'm sure in many other places, so maybe collectively we'll remember. We're going to compare this to the case of a mikvah that was measured, mikvah shenimdad v'nimtza chaser. So we're speaking about a mikvah that for what in those days, it only had the minimum amount. This is not shaykh to the way we build mikvahs today. But if you have a mikvah that has 40 or 41 saw, they never did 40, but it was near the minimum amount. And every now and then they examine the mikvah to ascertain that it still has the minimum share. And today, Kislev, they measure the mikvah, Oigavalt, that has 39 saw. What is the status of the kalim or the people that toiveled in the mikvah between now and last week when they measured 40 saw? Machlokes Tanoim. And that's a big topic. And somehow we're going to learn a lengthy brisa about Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva and their debate and how everyone got involved and how Rabbi Tarfon agreed to Rabbi Akiva. And this is where he told Rabbi Akiva, "Hapoidesh mimcha is kepoidesh min chayav." Separating myself from you, Rabbi Akiva, is like separating myself from my own life. It's gavaldik. From this topic, we're going to learn two dinim. One of the two dinim will be related to the din of Galus over here. Now, the comparison between one case and the other, the way we're going to learn it, I'll read all the words, but there's so much behind it. And I will have time at the end. What I'm saying now was I did not fully develop. I quickly looked in Masechtas Nida. There's a concept called Tarta L'Reusa, which is so important when the Bavli discusses this topic. That's Bechlal not mentioned over here. And I know that's very consequential, but we're not there yet. If we'll have time, today's daf, we'll get to the final topic in the Mishnah, which is what happens if while the Kohen is chewing the food, he discovers that he's not a Kohen. While the woman is chewing the food, she discovers that her husband passed away. In the Mishnah, we had, again, that was the final machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. The whole Mishnah is Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, in which Rabbi Eliezer says that you are allowed to swallow it. Rabbi Yeshua says that you have to spit it out. And we're going to begin, if we'll have time, at least the understanding of Rabbi Yechanan in this machlokes. And tomorrow, even if we get to where I want to get to, we're going to have a new understanding in this final machlokes. Okay. So Chavra, Daf Ayin Beis, Amid Aleph, 3 lines from the top. Behemshech, a Kohen discovers at some point that he's a cholol. Rabbi Yeshua says that everything he did in the past is valid. Rabbi Yeshua machshav. So now Rabbi Yirmiyah boy, va'af li'inyan sha'ar hadvarim kain, meaning, do we say it li'inyan sha'ar dvarim? Just to appreciate the way the Yerushalmi talks. What does the Yerushalmi mean, sha'ar dvarim? I would think about another topic. No, sha'ar dvarim means another step in the avodah. That's how they spoke. So if it's discovered in middle means, like we spoke about in the intro, and the Gemara specifies that if there was already Kabbalah, I want you to notice that the Yerushalmi doesn't say Shechita, because we know that shchita ksheira bezar. So it's irrelevant to shchita. What's even if the shchita happened by the kohen and then they discovered that he's a ben gerusha, ben chalutza, I understand that he for sure cannot continue. Even though he did the shchita, but we didn't need his kuhuna for the shchita. But if he did a Kabbalah, which may only be done by a kohen, and Rabbi Yeshua says, even though they discovered he's a ben gerusha, ben chalutza, the Kabbalah is kosher. Oh, so now, could the same kohen be zoyrik? L'shar devara means, this is a big, like, why would you even think that? But you would think that. You know, how sometimes Chazal say,
think that?
What then?
Who would think that? I'm not understanding what you're saying. Why would anybody think that? He's no good.
Very good, Danny. So I was about to say that even though sometimes Chazal say hakoil hoylech achar achitum, other times we have the opposite, that everything goes after its beginning. In other words, if sublated in the beginning is all of the subsequent steps, which have to happen. You know, we say that lamaila ein koyach chasar poil. For people who learn this topic in Hasidus, bekoyach, everything happened already when you begin something. If you were to look at it that way, since let's go with the pasuk of poyal yod of yirtza or poyal yod of tirza, whichever source. In other words, the chidush is that it's already done. Tirza, it's accepted. Danny, I'm struggling with you. I'm saying that it's gavaldik. So do we say mekabel achakach zoydech? The other example I skip by the intro, and then you have by menachos koimetz v'achakach maktir. That's the two steps by a mincha, and then
Rabbi,
let me just read the words. Or umaylik. Now moilik is like shchita. You see, shchita ksheira bezar. Malika is not ksheira bezar, right, guys? For those who don't remember, malika is the unique type of piercing the back of the nape of the bird. All of the rules of shchita is the opposite. You do it, your doiris, you do it with your nail. Whether you go through one or two semanim, that's the difference between chata so'oif and oila so'oif. Right? Regardless, the details. And then v'chakach mazeh, the hazoya, or mazeh v'chakach mitzui, just for those who remember. That's the kash.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Just to clarify, in the regular seder of the avodah of any of these karbanos, each step could be done by a different kohen, right?
That's correct. Very good. Danny's saying very good. Each step could be done by a different kohen, but they have to be done by a kohen. And the fact that Rabbi Yehuda somehow understands that a yid did Kabbalah Saddam, now we know he's not a kohen. We know he was never a kohen. We know he was never a kohen. Nevertheless, it's kosher. So there is a svara to say that he should be allowed to finish if he wants, even though there is an option of having someone else do it.
So why are we saying akol alecha charachitum? That's where I'm.
It's the opposite. No, if hakol charachitum, Yakir, that goes against. That would be why
exactly,
he should not do it.
I heard you saying. That's exactly what I heard you saying. So
I said that. I don't remember the other lashon. You know where we find this? We find this by Moshe Rabbeinu and by Yosef, the opposite lashon. That even though Moshe Rabbeinu did not bury Yosef Atzadik, he's given credit because he began it. I forgot, it's a Chumash Chitas.
Na'ut sufo b'tchilato.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go. That's a whole different statement, but good. Sefer Yitzira, no soifan b'tchilasan. So therefore, since the tchila was stark, even the soif is stark. Danny, you know what this is similar to? It's like if you say Tehillim Shabbos Mevarchim, your kids are good.
And your kids.
Because the beginning is good. The problem with Danny is Danny says, my father said it, so why should I say it? And it says in the Hayom Yom, it's good for you, for your kids and your grandkids. Okay, so now Rabbi Yaakov Bar Zavdi, B'Shem Rabbi Yitzchak, this is the first statement we'll have from this Amoida today. He says, I love this. I know the answer. From what? Miman detane. And like we spoke in the introduction, the din of a chatas gezula. You know what? Before we read the Gemara inside, it's so abbreviated. Let's read the Mara Fulda. 11 lines from the top, more or less, right? the top third of the narrow lines, in the beginning of the line, Osu oisek chatas gezula. What's the din of a chatas gezula? So a couple of steps. We learned this in Hanizikin, Gittin Nun Hey. Val chatas gezula, even though it's stolen, which means that the gazlan who was magdish this animal did nothing. Chazal said that if shaloi noida al rabim, that if the public does not know that it's stolen, by the way, lohoir rabim over here means 3 people. If it's not known to 3 people or more, so the Chazal had a koyach, and they said that even though it's stolen, shehi mechaperes. And bahatam. Why did they make this takana? Shelo yimshuchu hakoyhanim es yudeim alahakrev al gabi hamizbeach. And if they will have, in other words, and what's wrong if the kohanim won't be makrev? It's amazing. I said it wrong in the intro. Not because this guy won't get kapara when he was not a gazlan. They don't want the mizbeach to be idle for a moment. Right? Kates hamizbeach, if you remember. The dessert. You know, now, hachinami. Okay, I'm not going to read the Marafol, already gives away the secret. But that's the din of chatzas gezula. That also, chatzas gezula, shaloi noi dolar abim. That what the din is, now listen to this, shehi mechaperes, which means that it's 2 steps, guys, 2 steps. Step number 1 is, what happens if after the chatas was brought, Shloima, after it was brought, they discovered, the rabbim discovered that it was a gezula, that the man who brought it stole the animal. It's still going to be mechaperes. The Yerushalmi takes it for a given, even though I want you to know that this is in Bavli Amachloikes Rishonim, when in the Bavli they have this discussion. It's not just a given, they don't even speak it out. That just like if it's discovered after it was brought, even though now it's noy dolar rabim, it's mechaper. Step number 2, that even if it was discovered that it was stolen in middle of the avodah, like in these cases, that means that the kohen did the Kabbalah Saddam, and then noy dolar rabim, it's a gegam with the animal. The din there is, since you began it, finish it. Now it's noy dolar rabim, that the animal was never even mugdash. You began it, you finish it. So he's being medama inyan le'inyan. Since you began it, you finish it. That over there, Hada Amra, this teaches us concerning our question. Because he doesn't even speak out over there. He just, you have to understand on your own. Shuhu mekabel v'charkach zoyrech, yeah. Or koimetz v'charkach maktir. Or moilek v'charkach mazeh. And again, just to make it for the record, that in the Bavli, even though the Gemara does not explicitly speak out this question, from the discussion, there is a machlokes between the Rishonim in the Pshat in the Gemara, whether we even agree to this. But Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi b'shem Rabbi Yitzchak understood this as a given. Okay. Now, another topic related to this kohen who was discovered to be a chalol. But now we're speaking about that this kohen worked up the ranks and he became our kohen gadol. And like we mentioned, you have a person who was hoidig nefesh bishgaga. The key point, the zman that's foundational, is when based in paskint he has to go into galus. Just to understand, it's not about during the time of the killing. It's not about when he got to the Ari Miklot, to his Ir Miklot. It's about when based in Paskin that you are in the category of Hoirig Nefesh Bishgaga. And that's the din, that if when they made that psak, there was a living Kohen Gadol, then he stays there ad mois, Kohen Gadol. If when they ruled in Beis Din that he has to go to Galus, there was no Kohen Gadol, he will never go free. So now the question is, Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi, b'shem Rabbi Yitzchak Shal, before he gave the answer. Now he's giving you a kasha. That what? Now, different girsois, we're going to skip the next couple of words. We're following the version that he began by saying the following. Hoya roitseach, shaharek bishgaga, vigala. And at some point, while he's already in the Ir Miklot, or be'emes, after the psagdin, the noida shahakoyin gadol is a ben gerusha ben chalutza. So now the question is, ma at avid lei. What do we do? How do we treat the killer? And there are options. Minakotze elakotz. Either we say kimishu meis. What does that mean? It's amazing. We say, like Rabbi Yehuda was machshir, What do you mean you're machshir? Rabbi Yeshua is saying that everything, all of the avodah that he did is kosher. That means that it's not retroactive. B'mitzias, he was always a ben garusha ben chalutza, yeah. But the halacha of chalal is only mikano lahaba. A kohen gadol, therefore, when we discover, by the way, it has to be a bezdin, but they paskin. He's a ben garusha ben chalutza. It doesn't go retroactive. It only goes mikano lahaba. So basically, they're saying that from this moment forward, he's not even a kohen. That means the kohen gadol died. And that psak is equal to the death of the kohen gadol. And this Zajac is scot-free. He can go back home. In other words, it's keilu he died now. And therefore, v'yachzor haritzeach l'mekoymai now. That's to his benefit, if you're going to look at it that way. Or the opposite. Now that we discovered that he was never a kohen, he's never a kohen gadol, means we never had a kohen gadol. Rabbi Yeshua has a pasuk here. Rabbi Yeshua's machshir is only regarding avoida. Here, it's not about the avoida. He was never, the reality is, he was never a kohen. How can he be a kohen gadol? Which means there was never a kohen gadol. Which means this Zajac will never go free. Let me just read the words inside. Hold your question. Oy kemisha nigmar dina beloy kohen gadol, and therefore ve'ena yoytzem misham la'olam. What's your question, Danny?
This scenario, aside from the whole down, whatever that scenario, what about all the korbanos that maybe he brought?
We just said that machlekes Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer.
So that applies to everything. Well, let's say he did one of these.
Yes.
What's the one where everybody?
You're talking about the avoid on the Beis Hamikdash of Yom Kippur.
Whatever.
We paskin like Rabbi Yeshua, just for the record. Thank God. Yeah. You can't. It's not. It's certain things you can't redo. In other words, if I'm chayv a carbon chatas, Danny, and then let's go with Rabbi Eliezer, I get an opportunity to bring a carbon chatas, but any carbon that has to be brought bimoyadoi, it's as if they didn't bring a carbon. B'shoigeg, you can even say the word oines, doesn't make it. You didn't do it. Mamish. You can't, like, he brought a carbon musaf Shabbos. You can't redo it. If you miss a musaf this Shabbos, you don't bring two musafim next Shabbos. It doesn't work that way. Okay.
And last question, in the case of the kohen that we discovered that he's a ben right, middle of the service, but it says that it continues. Does that mean he himself does it?
Yes, it's about he himself doing it. Really.
Right now, he knows he's not a kohen.
That's right, because the machshir goes until the end. It's beautiful. Okay, so now this connection, chevra, I'm sure that if people will learn this in the yeshiva, they would spend a week on this. Now, this is really a famous brayso in the Bavli. It's known as, this is the way, mikvah shenimdad v'nimtza chaser. And we all get the issue. And I'm going to speak out. I remember a little bit about the chazaka mahashta, chazaka meikara, the tachal reyes. I know the lashonis of the Bavli. It's a whole different lashon over here. But let's just read in the beginning. Here, actually, the story happened. This is the Agadata in the Yerushalmi. You don't get stories. You're going to get a halachic question that happened in a certain place. Mit a maisa. Maisa, enjoy the Agadata. The magoira shall discos. So a magoira means a pool, which means a mikvah. And discos is a machloikis, whether it's a name of a person, whether it's a name of a place. So what happened in that place? And a discos could be a suburb of Yavne. Yavne is a Chavada place. Okay, the problem is sheniv gema. In other words, why would the mikvah no longer have the shear? Why would that happen? He's telling you what happened. That there was some damage that happened to the mikvah. No one knew about it. So some mikvah fell out. I want to go into another whole topic without time. If the pigam of our mikvah would happen in a way where the mayim will be zoichalin, all right, instead of them being ashboiden means they're gathered in one place, which is what we need, and zoichalin means they're flowing, then the whole mikvah is not kosher, not only because there's no shear, because the water is flowing out. If there's a crack in a mikvah now in which water is flowing out, I don't care if there's 400 saw of mayim of rain, it's not going to be kosher. But what happens if the pigam happens on the top of the mikvah? That means if the mikvah is full until the top, you have 40 saw. And an inch down, there's a crack. So the water flows, and then underneath, you're good. Whatever. In other words, the issue was not zoichalin. It's just the mitzvah. Something happened and the water got leaked out. Now, The only problem is v'nimdada. They measured it. Let's say they would measure a mikvah once a month or once a week. It doesn't matter how often. Maybe they never have to measure it, but because they discovered there's a pagam, so they said, let's measure it. And v'nimtza is chaseda. Okay. What's the question? Both on Adam and Kalim. The people that were tamei, the Kalim that were tamein, for which they used this mikvah to get tahara. Now, you measured it last week. It was vadai good. You measured it now it's vadai bad. But what do you do with the time in between? So machlokes. V'hoya. I mean, it's not Rabbi Tarfon Omer. This is like a big topic. So for this topic, Rabbi Tarfon was metayr and Rabbi Akiva was metame. Let's start with that. And the Brais over here, Chavra Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis, is going to share with us the back and forth that these two Tanoim had. Amar Rabbi Tarfon, let me tell you why I'm going to be lenient. Because hamikvah hazeh becheskas tahara. This is called echazaka d'me'ekara. It was measured a week ago. It doesn't matter when. It was established to be good. I know that now it's not good. But the chazaka d'me'ekara is extended for as long as you could. Now it's not good. But it doesn't go backwards. So we say, lo oilam hu b'toharasei at sheyavada shechaz. Comes along Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva agrees to the concept of a chazaka d'me'ekara. Makes sense. Makes sense. But why should you look at the mikvah and now say, the mikvah was kosher, chazaka d'me'ekara is extended, I'm going to make a chazaka d'me'ekara. The person that went into the mikvah, the keli that went into the mikvah prior to going into the mikvah had a chazak of tumah. Now that there's a doubt, extend the person's cheskas tumah until you can prove otherwise. Amar Rabbi Akiva, hatamei hazeh becheskas tumah, whether the person or keli. I agree with the logic. We don't say that the status of now goes backwards. It doesn't work that way because things deteriorate. So just because it's deteriorated now, how do you know it was deteriorated yesterday? I get. But there was another chazaka d'me'ekara, the Adam, the keli. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva was machmer, and he says, Lo'olam hu b'tumasei at sheyavad ashetar. Now you have a doubt. The doubt cannot be moitze midei vadai. Okay, hold on. So now, Amar Rabbi Tarfon. So now they began to go further. L'maze doimen. This is him trying to authenticate his shita. Lekula. And he says, Lo'oimed umakriv al gabi hamizbeach. Haha. V'noida shu ben gerusha ben chalutza. They brought this topic in. Chevra, like I mentioned, we paskin like Rabbi Yeshua. Both Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva. Everyone is agreeing to that. Just even though that in our Mishnah there's a machlokes, they're quoting this case, Lishitas Rabbi Yeshua. And the din is, look at his logic, and I know that you won't be so happy because we're just scratching barely the surface. And the din is that what? Sha'avidasa kisheira. In other words, when you discover a problem, the problem only begins mikanu lahaba. Let me tell you why these two cases are so not compatible. Because by the Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutza, it's even more. He's vadai. We discovered now that he was never good. It's like a kal v'chomer, if you want to word it that way. By the mikvah, I don't know if it wasn't good yesterday. I don't know. He doesn't even word it that way. He doesn't make a kal v'chomer. He says, just like we find in the din of a Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutz, that when we discover a problem, okay, mikanu lahaba, you have a problem. Same thing by the mikvah. We discovered a problem. Mikanu lahaba, you have a problem. We don't make the problem go backwards. Amar Rabbi Akiva, okay, very good. I like what you're saying. Now, in our Mishnah itself, where we had the machlokes Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer concerning Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutza, Rabbi Eliezer says that the avoid is psula retroactively. But then the Mishnah, our Mishnah wrote here in Terumos that everyone agrees that if he's discovered to have a balmum, everyone holds retroactive. That none of his avodah was good. Chavra, the reason why Rabbi Yeshua was machshir, we learned yesterday, it's a chiddush, it's from a pasuk, either like Rav or like Rabbi Yechanan. Amar Rabbi Akiva, okay, good. You want to compare it to Ben Gerusha Ben Chalutza? Let me compare it to a kohen who became a balmum. That lekula alma. That's our Mishnah said that. Sha'avidas psula. So the same thing should be over here. Now, this is a great comparison. Again, the kasha on this comparison is, Mele by the Balmum, we're speaking about a Balmum, they discovered he doesn't have a toe. He never had a toe. Here, just because the mikvah is not kosher now, you don't know if it was not kosher yesterday. This nuance is discussed in the Bavli.
Like 3 days ago, this little tile broke
In the Bavli, I don't remember where, I didn't have enough time. That Beis Amid Beis is one place, Nida, that I know the Gemara, I just looked it up. This is discussed a few times. I have no doubt that Lakula Alma, if the type of invalidation, like it's missing, if it would take a day for it to be missing, then everyone will hold it goes back for that time. It's that, no, if this takes a day to come to that level, they see a pagam, they see the crack. If they estimate from the crack water leaks, so it takes X amount of time, that time for sure it's time. You know that. But maybe it began yesterday, maybe it began a week ago, where there's a doubt. Balmum, there's no doubt. But nevertheless, Rabbi Akiva makes that comparison. There's a lot of details that we will discuss here. Before you have all of these svaras, okay, I'm going too quick. I'm going to let up Tarfin that Ma Akiva, Ani medamalei leben gerusha. I am making comparison to the din of ben gerusha, Rabbi Yeshua, machshir, retroactive. Va'at, I don't know, va'ata, this is Lashon Akeva. I don't know, va'at medamalei lebalmum. I get that's the argument. So Rab Tarfin decided to bring in all the chevra. That's the meaning. Ma Akiva, he was not talking to him. Even though Venira lemi doima, im leben gerusha doima. If you're right, then I'll agree with you, and I'll be. And if I care, then you'll agree to me. Then nil medenu mi ben gerusha, and you Rab Akiva have to be moided that it's tar. And I'll agree that if it im lebalmum doima, nil medenu lemi balmum. So in other words, he was challenging Rab Akiva. We got two sources. I agree with the comparison. Let's see what it's more similar to. So what happened was, Amalei Rabbi Akiva, I'll tell you why I'm making the right comparison. Because mikvah psulei begufay. It's an inherent problem. Balmum is a psulei begufay. So they're similar that it's a psul haguf. Va'al yochiach ben gerusha, because the ben gerusha's problem is not him, it's his mother, it's his father. That's number one. Va'oid, even though he didn't say those words, but now another reason that mikvah. How does one invalidate a mikvah? Just to know, there's a rule called Eid Echad Neman B'Yisurim. So if one witness comes and says that I measured the mikvah, from the moment he says it, Vadai Mikanu Lahaba, it's a problem. The Machlekes says, how do you treat what happened before? Mikvah Psula B'Yachad. The din of a Balmum, just the way it works, Eid Echad Neman B'Yisurim. This coin finally went to the mikvah, without a toe, I don't know, whatever the mum they saw. Only one person is enough to invalidate him. Va'al yechiach ben gerusha, because to passel someone's yichus, it has to be done by the Sanhedrin, by a Beis Din. Shubsula beBeis Din. And because of that, because of Rabbi Akiva's both arguments, to which Rab Tarfon had no response, the Nimnu Olav, they took a vote. The Chevra, everyone took a vote, and Vitimu, they sided with Rabbi Akiva, and you know who agreed? Rab Tarfon. So Amar Rab Tarfon, Rabbi Akiva, a Rebbe, he didn't call him. Akiva, but that's the way Hasidim speak to each other. That's no disrespect. They were Hasidim. And Shlomo says, and even the non-Hasidim yet, if you're from Yerushalmi, you have that midah toiva of Hasidim, that you're brothers with each other. Brother, don't call each other Rebbe. Brother, Akiva, ha-poirish mimcha ke-poirish mechayov. Mechayov. Me separating from you is like me separating from my very own life. Right? Beautiful. Now, hold on. Says the Gemara, guys, we're not done yet. We're still in the Brais. So, yeah. We're going to answer our question. And it's unbelievable difficult for me. But okay, but there's a comparison. I take that back. You had a shaila, right? What was our question? Our question was, is this hoidig nefesh bishgaga either free or never free? Zoy soy meres, Hoyo oimedu makar val gabei hamizbeach. V'noi dashu ben gerusha ben chalutza. Right? I'm not talking about Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Akiva. From when does he become invalidated? Huh? No. A kohen who's doing, not a kohen gadol, a kohen is doing the avodah. And it's discovered that he's a ben gerusha ben chalutza. What does the Brisa say? The Brisa says the words that the reason why you should compare mikveh to a balmum and not to the ben garusha, because shepsulei bebezdin. What makes someone miyuchas or not miyuchas, I don't care how they got there. It's a ma'aseh, it's a psak of bezdin. She'avidasei kisheira achi yapasul bebezdin. First of all, before we come back to our topic, that's a very important rule. And he for sure can continue doing the avodah. Lachatchila, very good. Yeah. I know some of the Noisei Kalim speak about 1A, 2A, and I learned this yesterday to the limited that I learned it. I don't see that being Negeya here at all. You'll see why we said that in a moment. So now, says the Gemara, I'm going to learn 2 dinim from this Brisa. One, connected to our question. Okay. Oh, one second. Now that Rabbi Yossi made that statement, that what invalidates the ben gerusha ben chalutza, not the mitzias, for which eidachanam bisurim, but the Brisa says shepsulei bebezdin, makes more sense to say that the psul of bezdin, especially Rabbi Yeshua, is mamish only mikano lahaba, which is great, and that's taka one conclusion we learn from over here. In other words, it's like Eidei Kiyum, Eidei Birur. It's not now we were mavarer that he always was invalid. We don't look at it that way. He becomes invalid when Bezdin paskins. Prior to the psak of Bezdin, even if we know all the information, no one even argued with Rabbi Yossi, he can lachatchila do the avodah. So we had a kohen gadol. That now Ki'ilu passed away.
Not like Saras in a house, you got all your furniture. And then the
very good. Then he's saying very good that even though the house, that we know the kohen is going to say that the house is a bayis menuga, but the Torah chasim amoinam al Yisrael, and the Torah advises us to take our belongings out of the house because the reasons for the psak are there. But when does the house become tummy? When you're paskin? Very good. So now, I want to say like this. Like all Yerushalmis, it's not spoken out what I just said. No, it's the proof from here is not spoken out, and therefore, again, I didn't have enough time to look it up. The Rambam does not paskin like this. So over there, the Kesav Mishnah has a whole discussion whether the Rambam found somewhere in the Bavli that he doesn't know where a sugya that implies the opposite, or maybe he learned this whole Yerushalmi different. No, he was challenged by the fact that throughout Bavli and Yerushalmi, this is where this is discussed. And the way we learned it, the way most people learned it, the Gemara concluded that the Hoidig Nefesh Bishgaga will go free. The Rambam says the Hoidig Nefesh Bishgaga will never go free. Where did he get it from? Either there's somewhere in the Bavli, go know the Rambam, he was Medayik something, or he learned the Gemara different, because it's difficult to learn. The Gemara doesn't speak it out. Now that we quoted this Brisa, we're going to learn another din from this Brisa. What's the other din? Listen to this. And this is addressing somehow what I'm going to quote from the Bavli. That Safak Balmum. What happens? Not that we discovered that this guy was Vadai Balmum. Listen to what I'm saying. Not we discovered Vadai Balmum. What happens if there's an aid that comes with information that just a mashal could be certain blemishes, halachically is doubt whether it's good or not. It's not that now we know, now we have a doubt. It has to be that Avidas Psula. Why must it be? Because really, now I'm going to say what the Bavli is bothered with the comparison of Rabbi Akiva. How can you bedama one to the other? By the Balmum, Rabbi Akiva, just like a Balmum, Avidas Psula. So the mikveh, everything is a tameh. 1 second. When you discover someone is a Balmum, you know he was always a Balmum. No, you only discovered it now, but what you discover now is that it was Vadai a problem when he did Avodah yesterday. That's why our Mishnah says that L'kula Alma, once you discover a kohen is a balmum, all of his avodah is puzzle. By a mikvah, you're not discovering now that it was puzzle last week. You have a doubt. So how could that this is spoken out on the Bavli? The way the Yerushalmi says it, by the fact that no one asked that question against Rabbi Akiva, the way I understand, is a raya must be that the din is that even if what's brought to the Beis Din about this kohen, not that he's vaday balmum, that only safek balmum, still the halacha will be avidos psula. Must be that. Why? Because since you, meaning Rabbi Akiva and the Braisa, the at medamalei lebalmum she'avidas psula, and the kasha will be, how can you compare one case to the other when they're not compatible? Because by a balmum, if it's only balmum vadai, of course avidas psula, because now you discovered he was always a balmum. By a mikvah, it's only a doubt. And the fact that Rabbi Akiva brought a raya from compared the doubt of the mikvah shleima to a balmum must be that Rabbi Akiva held that even if the aid that's coming and saying that this guy has a problem, begashmias, there's a blemish, even if what he's bringing up is only halachically a suffix, we will also say that every avodah that he did, not suffix, not good, vadai, not good. That's why you can compare one case to the other. And just concluding this whole sugya, Amar Rabbi Chanina zoisei meres, that psul mishpacha tzarich Beis Din. This is very important. Unlike a balmum, unlike the psul of a balmum where no Beis Din is needed, doesn't mean no Beis Din is needed. But I'm using my mashal of Eidei Birur. That the Eidim are being mevarer what always was. The fact that we are the way we're learning the Gemara, not the way that Rambam, maybe the Rambam found something else. We're learning the Gemara that we're saying that the reason why the person it goes out free is because the kohen gadol was a kohen gadol until now. So he's saying that any psul mishpacha needs to have a base, and not enough to have one witness testify. It doesn't come from the person. It has to be a psak of the Beis Din. And why is he saying that? He's adding a svara to it, the way the Mara Fulda learns. And what is he saying at the end, the Mara Fulda? Why is it that way? Look inside the Mara Fulda, right under the Gemara, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. That psul mishpacha, kol pisul sheba oilam, hanegeh b'mishpacha. See, that's the difference. Guys, when you say a person is a balmum, who are you invalidating? Only that person. A guy's a kohen balmum who has kinderlach that don't have the mum, they're good. That's it's the Mara Fulda is explaining that Rabbi Chanina is giving you the sfarim. When you are invalidating one yachid, it's easier to do that. You don't need to have the Beis Din paskin to make him puzzle. Beis Din is just revealing what we know. When you're saying you're a ben Gerusha ben Chalutza, guys, a ben Gerusha ben Chalutza, I know that his father, if his father divorces his wife that was a Gerusha, then he'll go back to being a kosher kohen. We had this in Makkos, the whole chiddush that even that hamechalel einoi mischalel. Remember that? It's only temporary. But the ben gerusha, him and his kids and his grandkids, will always be chalalim. It's like if you want to make someone into a mamzer, any type of psul that's affecting the mishpacha, you need to have a Beis Din to do it. Beautiful. Kigoin ben gerusha ben chalutza oy pisol mamzerus v'chayoytze boy shepoisel al yedei eduzu kol hamishpacha ba mimenu einoy nifsel ela al yedei Beis Din shechokru v'darshu achar adavu v'psuloi ve'einoy nifsel al yedei edim l'chuda. Masha enkin, if you have a balmum edim l'chuda, you don't even need a Beis Din. That's gavaldik. And I want to add to that, when Chazal tell us that even though when Mashiach will come, that Rambam writes, one of the first things the Sanhedrin will do after we reestablish the Sanhedrin is taka to be boidik the yichus of Kahanim and Leviim. But then he writes, when it comes to all of the other tribes, he'll be boidik the Sanhedrin to know what shavit we are from, to know what part of Eretz Yisrael is our nachla, but he will not be boidik in our yichus. And like Chazal tell us, even regarding mamzerus, that mishpacha nitma'a, not tuma. It gets, if it's not known, no, who you fooling? Before you paskin that this person has a psul lemishpacha, there is no psul mishpacha. It's the Beis Din that makes that psak din. Okay, I wanted to go further, but instead of going further, I'm going to just go say the following: that in Nida Dav Beis Amud Beis, when we speak about this case of mikvah shenimdad v'nimsa chaser, the reason we take a paskin like Rabbi Akiva, but there's a reason there, and I want to tell you the reason there is not shayach over here. not shaykh, which is a problem that I'm bringing up. What's the Gemara says that there's a tartel reisa. What's the tartel reisa? Think about it. The mikvah now means there are two negatives against one positive. The reason why we're machmer by mikvah we're machmer. But it has nothing to do with our case. Even though we are comparing it. Over there, the item was tamei. The chazak of the person was tamei, the mekara. The mikvah now is tamei. The cheskas hashta is tamei. What's going good? That the mikvah last week was tar. So you have one chazaka, the mekara, good against two chazakas. Tar telereyas. That's why we're metamed. Which implies that if you don't have the tar telereyusa, we would not be so machmer. What am I saying? That I'm saying that the negeya, the going retroactive. The going retroactive b'chlal. Whenever there's only a suffix, tamei or not tamei, there's one doubt, then we would not say that the chazaka problematic of before gets extended. And we would maybe say like Rabbi Akiva. We would look at the positive and extend the positive forward. Only by two negatives. That's very important. And by the mikvah, there's two negatives. Because the item was tamei, that's why you took it to the mikvah. Yeah. And the mikvah now is tamei. The mikvah last week was tar. Look at the words in the Gemara. Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. Look in Nida. Exactly. We put everything together. So when you have two chazakas against one chazaka, or the two chazakas become like a big chazaka against a weaker chazaka, that's where we're machmer.
Why there's no thought that I see here? Here's only one. Which case?
I would say by a suffix balmum, I would say there's no tartelereas. You don't know. You have a doubt.
But again, you can say like this guy has to bring the core, so it's also like a negative. The same that you say like this case, it's too many. That's why.
Okay, one second. That person is chayv a carbon, and there's a suffix, and there's a suffix. It's not a chazaka. That's the biggest chiddush, and it's a suffix. So we're putting the suffix together with the chazaka,